The phone didn't ring so much as detonate. I'm 64 years old. I spent 28 years as a secondary school principal in regional Queensland before I retired. And before that, another 6 years teaching in classrooms, where I learned very quickly that children will tell you everything you need to know if you just stop talking long enough to listen. My body knows how to be still in a crisis. That's not courage. That's just what decades of dealing with other people's emergencies does to you. You stop flinching. You go quiet. You move. But when my phone lit up the nightstand at 1:47 inches the morning, and I saw the name on the screen, I flinched. I flinched hard. Poppy, not my daughter Renee. Not her husband Craig. Not any of the numbers I might have expected at that hour. Just one word. The name my granddaughter called me from the moment she could talk, back when she was 3 years old and couldn't quite manage the full word. And it stuck the way all the best names do, permanently and without apology. Her name is Isla. She was 10 years old. She should have been asleep. I answered before the second ring had finished. She didn't say hello. She didn't say anything for a moment. There was just this sound. And I want to be precise here. Because the sound matters, it wasn't crying exactly. It was the aftermath of crying. The hollow, scraped-out kind of breathing you hear from a child who has been alone with their pain long enough that the pain has gone quiet on them. Like a storm that's passed but left everything wet and broken. Poppy, she finally said. Just that. Just my name. I was already sitting up. Already reaching for my glasses on the bedside table. I'm 64. And I live alone. My wife Margaret passed 3 years ago after 36 years of marriage, and my house in Toowoomba is quiet in a way that still catches me off guard sometimes. Quiet has a different texture when it's yours by choice versus when it's just what's left. What's happened, sweetheart? I kept my voice even. Principal's voice. The one that doesn't wobble even when everything underneath it is. They went, she said. Who went? Mum and Dad. And Jackson. Jackson is my grandson. Renee and Craig's biological son. He's 13. He's got Craig's jaw and Renee's stubbornness and the kind of easy confidence that comes from never once in your life having had to wonder whether you belong. Where did they go? Her voice dropped. Like she was ashamed of the answer. Like it was somehow her fault. Europe, she said. London and Paris and Italy. They've been planning it for months. The graduation trip. Jackson finished year 7. And Mum said it was a big deal. She paused. But I finished year 4, Poppy. That's a big deal too, isn't it? I pressed my fist to the side of my face and stared at the ceiling of my dark bedroom. Of course it is, I said. Of course it is. Why didn't they take me? And there it was. 4 words that no child should ever have to ask. 4 words that lit something in my chest that I haven't felt since the day I sat across a conference table from a government official who told me that a student I'd been fighting for 2 years had fallen through every gap the system had. That specific, particular quiet fury that comes from witnessing something that should not be. I don't know yet, baby, I said. But I'm going to find out. I didn't know then that those 7 words would be the most important thing I said in a very long time. I called my neighbor Dougie Freeman at 2 o'clock in the morning. Dougie is 72, retired electrician, widower, and the only person I know who treats an unexpected phone call with the same casual energy most people reserve for a conversation at the shops. He picked up on the second ring, sounding completely alert. Doug, I said, I need you to water my tomatoes. Silence. Then, how long? Not sure. Few days minimum. That little girl of Renee's? I didn't answer immediately. I'll grab your key in the morning, he said. That's Dougie. 23 years of living across the road from each other, and he has never once asked a question I didn't want to answer. The people who don't make you explain yourself in a crisis, those are the people worth keeping close. I booked the first flight I could find. Toowoomba to Brisbane, Brisbane to Melbourne, where Renee and Craig lived in a suburb called Balwyn, one of those leafy, wide street neighborhoods where the gardens are immaculate and the property prices are impossible, and everything on the surface looks thoroughly fine. The total travel time was going to be close to 4 hours by the time I factored in the connections. I am 64 years old and my left knee has a particular opinion about economy seating, but I wasn't going to drive 9 hours at 2 in the morning. Some decisions make themselves. Before I closed my laptop, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one I haven't opened in about 18 months, and I took out a small digital voice recorder, the kind I used to carry during difficult parent meetings, back in the days before everything went to apps and cloud storage, and everyone's phone was also a surveillance device. Small, unobtrusive, old habit. I told myself it was just instinct. I told myself I'd figure out later whether that was true. I landed in Melbourne at 7:30 in the morning. The city had that particular winter gray it gets in July, the kind of cold that's not dramatic, just persistent, like an argument no one can quite be bothered finishing. I rented a car from the counter, a dark gray Hyundai that smelled of the previous hirer's takeaway, and drove 20 minutes to Balwyn. The house on Fernshaw Road looked exactly as I remembered. Double brick, cream render, native garden out front that Renee had spent a small fortune on because she'd read somewhere that councils were encouraging it. 2 cars usually in the driveway, both gone now. The house had that specific stillness of a place where the adults have left, and a child has been trying not to take up too much space. Isla must have heard the car. The front door opened before I reached the path. She was in her school tracksuit, the green one with the yellow stripe on the sleeve even though it was school holidays. Her hair, which is dark and straight and usually pulled back in a way that Renee manages for her on school mornings, was loose and tangled. Her eyes were swollen in the way that takes hours to produce. She'd been crying well before she called me. She didn't speak. She just came down the 3 front steps and walked into me. And I caught her the way you catch something you've been afraid of. Dropping, carefully, and with both hands. She wrapped her arms around my middle and pressed her face against my chest, and I felt her whole body exhale. One long, shuddering breath, like she'd been holding it since the moment they left. "I've got you," I said. "Poppy's here." We stood like that on the front path for a while. A woman walked past with a pram and gave us the particular suburban nod that means, "I see you. I'm not going to interfere. Carry on." 2 birds fought briefly in the bottle brush by the fence. The morning went on around us the way mornings do. Indifferent and ordinary. Which is its own kind of cruelty when you're standing in the middle of something that isn't ordinary at all. Eventually I pulled back and looked at her face properly. "Have you eaten?" She shook her head. "Slept?" A small, unconvincing nod. "Right," I said. "Inside. I'm going to make you breakfast." "You can't cook," she said. Her voice was still rough. "I'm going to make you breakfast anyway. Lower your expectations now. It'll be easier for everyone." She almost smiled. Almost. I'd take it. The house told me things before Isla said a single word. I've spent nearly 3 decades reading spaces, staff rooms, classrooms, the particular geography of how a family arranges itself in a waiting area, and what a house chooses to put on its walls is a document as clear as anything written down. Renee and Craig had a gallery wall in the hallway. Framed photos, the proper kind. Printed and mounted, not just printouts. I walked slowly. I looked carefully. Jackson's school photos. Year 3 through Year 7. Jackson's football team photo. A shot of the 3 of them. Renee, Craig, Jackson, on what looked like the Gold Coast. All sunburned and laughing. Jackson's swimming ribbon display, actual framed ribbons, hung like bunting. A candid of Craig coaching Jackson's football team, both of them looking at something off camera, the same angle to their shoulders. I counted the photos. 17 in total. You might be wondering how many featured Isla. 3. 3 photographs. In a hallway of 17. One was her school photo from this year, slightly crooked in its frame. One was a group shot at what looked like a birthday party for someone else, Isla at the edge, half turned as though she'd been passing through. One was a photo of her and Renee together, just the two of them, taken on what I recognized as Mother's Day 2 years ago, because I'd been there. Renee's hand was on Isla's shoulder. Renee was looking at the camera. Isla was looking at her mother. I stood in front of that Mother's Day photo for a long moment. Isla appeared beside me. "I don't really like that one," she said quietly. "Why not?" She thought about it. "Mum looks happy in it," she said. "I just look like I'm trying really hard." 8 words from a 10-year-old. 8 words that contained more insight than most adults reach in a lifetime. I reached up and touched the recorder in my breast pocket. Over toast, I found bread and eggs and managed something that was technically food. Isla talked. I let her lead. You don't push a child who's just spent the night alone in a house. You open a door, step back, and wait. "When did they tell you they were going?" I asked. "Monday," she said. "After dinner." "Dad said it was Jackson's graduation present for finishing primary." I nodded. "And you? Had you finished year 4? "Yes." "Did they mention a present for you?" She looked at her toast. "Dad said he'd get me something when they got back. Something nice from London." She said the last part carefully, like she'd been rehearsing how to make it sound like enough. "How long are they away?" 12 days. "And who's staying with you?" She looked up then, and I saw something in her face that I recognized from 30 years of working with children. The particular expression of a child who's been told that an arrangement is perfectly fine and has decided to believe it, mostly because the alternative is too much to sit with. "Mrs. Aguilar from next door," she said. "She checks in morning and night. And I have Mum's number. And she said to text if I need anything." "I see. And last night, when you called me, where was Mrs. Aguilar?" "She goes to bed at 9, Isla said. "She's very old." "How old?" "I think 80-something. I wrote nothing down at that moment. I didn't need to. Some things simply imprint." I asked her, as gently as I knew how, about other times. "Has this happened before?" "Not the whole trip thing necessarily. Just times when you felt like Jackson was included in something and you weren't." She looked at the ceiling the way children do when they're counting something they'd rather not count. The silence went on long enough that my toast went cold. "A fair few times, Poppy," she finally said. "Tell me one." She picked at the edge of the table. "Last year, Jackson's football finals were on a Saturday, and there was also this art thing at school. I had 2 paintings in it. The teacher said they were really good, and I was going to get a certificate." I kept my face still. "Dad took Jackson to the football, and Mum said she'd come to the art thing, but then she said Jackson needed her there because he gets nervous before big matches, and she promised Jackson she'd be there, and..." She stopped. "Did she come to the art thing?" "No. Mrs. Chen came. My teacher. She took a photo of me with my certificate and sent it to Mum, and before I could stop myself I thought, Exhibit A. I asked about birthdays. Isla's is in April. Jackson's is in November. Jackson's 13th in November had been a party at a venue in the city. Laser tag in a private room and 14 friends, and a proper cake from a bakery. Isla's 10th in April had been, in her words, cake at home, and we went to the movies, just us. Which sounds fine. Which sounds perfectly reasonable. Except for what came next. "Was that what you wanted?" I asked. She shrugged the way kids do when they've learned that wanting things sometimes costs more than it's worth. I said I wanted a sleepover with my friends. But Dad said it was too much organizing. I kept my voice level. "And Jackson's party, did that seem like a lot of organizing?" She looked at me steadily. "Yes," she said. "But that's different." "How is it different?" She didn't answer. Because she knew. Because she'd already worked it out. The way children work out the things adults think they're hiding. Quietly and in private. And usually much earlier than anyone suspects. That's Exhibit B. My daughter called at 10:30. I let it ring. Her husband called at 11, then at 15:15. At 20 to 12, Craig left a voicemail that I would eventually play in a very different setting. I replayed all 3 messages while Isla was in the shower. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone lukewarm, my notepad, and the recorder. And I listened. First message. Renee. 10:32 a.m. From what sounded like an airport or a hotel lobby, echoing and busy. Dad. Hi. Look. I'm guessing Isla rang you. I thought she might. I just want you to know she's completely fine, Mrs. Aguilar is right next door, and Isla is really very independent for her age. She's honestly better at being alone than most kids her age. She's fine. Call me back. Better at being alone. My daughter said that about her 10-year-old daughter and didn't hear what she was actually saying. Second message. Craig. 11:05 a.m. Richard. Mate. Just give us a call when you can. We're 8 hours behind, so it's a bit late here now, but I'll have my phone on. Isla's a tough kid. She's going to be absolutely fine. Just checking in. Checking in. They called me to check in. Not once in either message did they ask how Isla was. Not once did either of them say, "Can I speak to her? Can you put her on? Is she okay? I want you to sit with that." Third message. Craig again, 11:43 a.m. His voice was slightly different this time. Less casual. More managed. Look, Richard. I know this might look. I know it probably seems like we've done the wrong thing here, but you've got to understand. The flights were booked 8 months ago, and at the time we genuinely didn't know if Isla would be in a good place to travel. She'd been having some anxiety about new situations, her teacher mentioned it, and we thought it was kinder to let her stay home in a familiar environment. We were going to explain it better. It got away from us a bit. I set my phone down on the table very carefully. It got away from us. 8 months of planning a 12-day European holiday. Flights, hotels, train passes, probably a travel agent. 8 months in which nobody sat down with their 10-year-old daughter and said, "Here is why we made this decision. Here is what we thought about your feelings. Here is how we plan to make it up to you." It just got away from them. I picked up my notepad. I wrote 3 words, underlined twice. Pattern, documentation, options. Isla came back from the shower in fresh clothes, her hair damp, looking approximately 7 years old and also somehow about 45. I had seen that look on children's faces in my career more times than I could easily count. The look of a child who has decided, somewhere along the line, not to expect too much. It is the saddest thing a child's face can do. "You stayed," she said. Like she'd half expected me to be gone. "Told you I would." She sat down and pulled her knees up to her chest. "Is Mum angry that you came?" "No," I said. Then more honestly, "I don't know. And it doesn't matter." She nodded slowly. "Poppy." She looked at her knees. "I'm sorry I called you in the middle of the night. Don't apologize for that. Ever. Mum says I'm oversensitive. That I make things bigger than they are." I put my pen down and looked at her directly. "Isla, calling someone who loves you when you're frightened and alone is not being oversensitive. That is exactly what you're supposed to do. That is the precise reason grandparents exist." I paused. And for the record, I have cried exactly twice in 30 years of running a school. Once when a kid I'd been worried about for 2 years got the result he needed to go to university, and once when I had to tell a staff member her husband had been in an accident. Neither time did anyone tell me I was oversensitive. Her eyes went wide. Teachers cry, principals cry harder. We're just better at waiting until no one's watching. She almost smiled again. This time, it got a bit further. Right, I said, standing up. We are not spending the day in this house. Get your shoes. Where are we going? Somewhere that isn't here. That's enough of a plan for now. We ended up at a place called Agatha's, in the main street of Baldwin. The kind of cafe that has been there long enough to have a loyal, elderly local clientele and absolutely no interest in trendy rebranding. Checkered tablecloths. A cabinet with actual slices of cake rotating slowly. A woman behind the counter with reading glasses pushed up on her head, who looked like she'd heard every kind of story and wasn't rattled by any of them. Isla ordered a toasted cheese sandwich and a strawberry milkshake with the quiet decisiveness of someone who has thought about what they actually want and decided to simply ask for it. I ordered a long black and a slice of lemon tart because I am 64 years old and that is what 64 looks like on my best days. Our waitress, her name badge, said Bev, which is exactly correct, set down the milkshake and gave Isla a look that contained a full conversation without words. Then she looked at me. Granddaughter? She said. I said yes. Because she is. You've got a good one there, Bev said. And left us to it. Over lunch I did something I had been carefully not doing all morning. I started asking real questions. Not interrogating. I've never believed in interrogating children. But I have spent 3 decades learning how to have a conversation that quietly becomes a document. Open questions. Long pauses. No pressure. Let the child lead, and just make sure you're keeping up. Tell me about your school, I said. Year 4 was good? Mostly. I like reading. And art. Mrs. Chen says I'm gifted in art. She used that actual word. She did? Yes. She put 2 of my paintings in the hallway display. The ones for the art show. I remembered. The art show. The certificate. The empty seat where 2 parents should have been. Do you still have the certificate? She nodded. It's in my room. On my desk. Not on the wall? She looked at her milkshake. Mum said she'd frame it, but she hasn't gotten around to it yet. When was the show? September. This was July. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I asked about Renee's relationship with Isla. I asked carefully. The way you approach a dog that's been frightened, slow, indirect, no sudden movements. Do you and your mum spend much time together? Just the 2 of you? Isla thought about it. Sometimes. She's busy with Jackson's football and stuff. She helps with his training on weekends. Do you have anything like that? An activity? A weekend thing? I used to do swimming. But I stopped because the training was early Saturday mornings. And that was when Jackson's games were. Who made that decision? She looked at me. I did, she said. But Mum seemed relieved. There it is. A 10-year-old who had already learned to make herself smaller, so the machinery of the family could run without friction. A child who had absorbed the shape of what she was supposed to want until it matched the space she'd been given. That, right there, is the quiet kind of harm. Not dramatic, not loud, just a child, slowly and steadily, learning not to ask. I asked her one more question over the lemon tart, which was quite good actually. Isla. If you could tell Mum and Dad one thing, just one thing, and you knew they'd genuinely listen, what would it be? She didn't hesitate. She'd already thought about this. She'd probably thought about it a lot. That I know, she said. I know when I'm an afterthought. Kids always know. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and pressed record. We got back to the house around 3 in the afternoon. I'd stopped at the supermarket and let Isla choose what she wanted for dinner. She did so with that particular careful restraint I'd seen earlier. Always checking my face before putting something in the trolley. Always choosing the smaller thing when there were 2 options. I let her take her time. I didn't comment on the restraint because naming it would have embarrassed her, but I noted it The way I used to note the children who ate their school lunch too fast because they weren't sure meals were reliable. While Isla settled on the sofa with a book, I went to the hallway. I photographed every image on that gallery wall. 17 photographs. I recorded the contents of each one. I noted the frames. Jackson's were all matching dark timber, properly mounted. Isla's 3 were in 2 different frame styles, like they'd been added at different times, as different thoughts. I stood in front of that Mother's Day photo, the one where Isla said she was trying hard, and I spoke quietly into the recorder. Wednesday, approximately 3:20 p.m. Fernshaw Road, Baldwin, Victoria, home of Renee and Craig Agatha. 2 Dan. Crand, the Tornian, hallway. Wall documentation. 17 photographs displayed in main hallway. Subject Isla appears in 3. In 2 of these, she is visually at the edge or periphery of the group. In 1, she is the sole subject alongside her mother. Frames for subject Isla are inconsistent with the framing used for the other displayed photographs. No photographs document Isla's school achievements, artwork, or extracurricular participation. 6 photographs document Jackson's sporting achievements alone. I clicked it off, walked back to the lounge room. Isla was reading, her feet tucked under her, the book held up close to her face, the way kids do when they're genuinely lost in something. I sat in the armchair across from her and opened my notepad. "Poppy," she said, not looking up. "Yes." "Is parallel with 1 L or 2? She was doing a crossword on the back of the book's inner cover. With a pencil. Very neatly. 2, I said. She filled it in. Frowned at the next clue. "Are you going to make me go back to just waiting?" she said. "When they come home?" She said it as casually as she'd asked about spelling, with the particular casual tone children use for questions they've already braced themselves to hear the answer to. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But I want you to hear something, and I need you to actually hear it. Not just nod. Okay?" She put the book down. "You are not a second thought," I said. "You are not an inconvenience that gets managed. You are not something to be kept comfortable and quiet while the real decisions get made around you." I kept my voice steady. "You are the whole point of a family. A child doesn't earn her place at the table by being easy. She has a place at the table because she exists. Because she's ours. Because you are ours." Her chin wobbled once. Just once. She stopped it. Then she picked up her book. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay," I said back. My daughter rang that evening. This time I answered, "Dad." Her voice had the particular texture of someone who had rehearsed what they were going to say and was now delivering it. "We didn't abandon her." That's a very strong word, and I want to be clear. Renee. I said her name the way I used to say student names when the conversation needed to change direction. Not harsh. Just clear. She stopped. "I'm not here to fight with you," I said. "I'm here because your daughter called me at 1:47 inches the morning, from a house she was alone in, because the adults who were supposed to be responsible for her were 17 hours away. That's the fact we're starting from. Silence. Mrs. Aguilar is right next door, an 80-something woman who goes to bed at 9 o'clock. More silence. I asked her a question then. The same question I'd been carrying all day. "Renee, when you look at your daughter's life in this house, the photos on the wall, the holidays, the birthday parties, the Saturday mornings at swimming, the art show in September, when you look at all of it honestly, what do you see?" The silence that followed was the longest of the conversation. "I love Isla," she said finally. "I genuinely love her. I know you do," I said. "And she knows you do too. In the way children know things, she feels it. But loving someone and choosing them are 2 different things. And a child who is loved but not chosen learns a particular lesson. She learns that love is not the same as belonging. And that lesson, once learned, is very hard to unlearn. Another long silence. When her voice came back, it was smaller. Different. I don't know when it shifted, she said. It wasn't intentional. The most important harms rarely are. I said. That doesn't make them smaller. We'll talk when we get home. She said. Yes, I said, we will. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that call. I had my notepad. I had the recorder. I had a list that spanned the previous 8 months of documented incidents. The art show, the birthday, the swimming lessons, the Saturday football mornings, the holiday photos I'd found on the family iPad that Isla had shown me without quite understanding she was showing me evidence. I had a folder on my laptop with every photo I'd taken that day. And I had, in my pocket, the card of a family lawyer named Sandra Osei, whom I had consulted over the phone that morning during the flight layover in Brisbane. Sandra had listened to everything I told her in a professional, thorough, and deeply unimpressed silence. And then she had said, "If what you're describing is accurate and documented, there are options. Let's talk when you're settled. I am 64 years old, and I spent 28 years in schools watching what happens when the adults around a child choose convenience over that child. I know the long-term geography of that landscape better than I ever wanted to." I called Sandra back. Renee and Craig flew home 11 days later. I was still in Melbourne. Isla and I had fallen into something that resembled a routine morning walks to the park 2 streets over, afternoons at the library or at Agatha's, evenings making dinner together, which is to say Isla supervised, while I attempted not to burn things. She was a surprisingly good cook for 10. She had taught herself from YouTube videos, she told me, because Mum was usually busy with Jackson's training on weekday evenings. I noted that too. They came through the front door at 6:22 p.m. on a Thursday with rolling suitcases and duty-free bags and the sunburned, vaguely guilty look of people returning from somewhere wonderful who know, on some level, that they shouldn't have gone without someone. Jackson was excited. Tall, easy, entirely unconscious of the temperature in the room, the way 13-year-olds can be. He dropped his bag, said Isla. "Hey," and wandered off to his room. 13. Isla was at the kitchen table doing her crossword. She didn't look up. That silence landed on Craig's face like something physical. I watched him flinch. "Isla, love." Renee started. "She can hear you," I said from the doorway. Renee looked at me. "Craig," I said. "There's something in the letterbox." He frowned. Went to the door. Came back with a thick envelope, the official kind, with a law firm's return address in the top left corner. "What is this?" "That is a formal letter from a solicitor acting on my behalf," I said, "regarding an application for a family court order relating to Isla's living arrangements and the documentation of a pattern of differential treatment between Isla and Jackson Stafford over the preceding 12 months. I let that settle. Sandra is very thorough. Renee's face went the color of the cream walls. "You can't. It's already filed," I said. "Not an ultimatum. A fact." Craig opened the envelope slowly. The way people open something they already know they're not going to enjoy. He read the first page. Sat down on the arm of the sofa. Just sat down. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. "Dad," Renee said quietly. "I'm not here to burn your family down," I said. "I'm here because a 10-year-old girl called me at 2 in the morning. Alone, frightened, asking why she wasn't wanted on a trip that was planned for 8 months. And nobody in this house had a good answer for her." Craig looked at the letter. Then, at Isla. Isla was looking at her crossword. "Is she?" "She's fine," I said. "She's better than fine. She's been very brave." I sat down across from them both. I put the notepad on the table. Not as a threat, just present. The way a document is present. "What I'd like to talk about," I said, "is not what the court will decide. Though we can discuss that, but whether you'd like the opportunity, before it comes to that, to do something different. I kept my voice level, something that looks like choosing her. Consistently. Not once. Not when it's convenient. Every time. Another long silence. This time, it was Renee who broke first. She started crying. Quietly. With the particular grief of someone confronting a reflection they'd been avoiding. I handed her a tissue. Because I was raised correctly, and I'm not in the business of making people feel worse than they've already made themselves feel. I don't know how we let it happen, she said. The most honest thing she'd said since she got home. I know, I said gently, but Isla knows too. And she needs to see you know it. Not once. Every day. Going forward. The family court process moved slowly, as it does. Sandra Osei was everything I'd hoped, methodical, clear-eyed, and entirely undramatic about the seriousness of what we were presenting. The documentation held. The photographs. The recorder transcripts. The testimony from Isla's teacher, Mrs. Chen, who was prepared to speak on the record about the art show and the empty seats and the mother who never came. In the end, it didn't go to a full hearing. Renee and Craig agreed to a formal family mediation process, supervised contact arrangements for a 6-month period with monthly reviews, and mandatory family therapy, all three of them together, and Isla individually with a child psychologist named Dr. Kwan, whom Isla described as the lady who asks about feelings and also has excellent biscuits. The formal outcome was not custody. It was something more specific. A legally documented parenting agreement that set out, in plain language, the expectation of equal participation, equal inclusion, equal celebration. It named the art shows and the birthdays and the holiday planning. It was not a punishment. It was a blueprint. Sandra called it unusual. I called it necessary. 6 months later, Isla's 11th birthday in April was a sleepover. 8 friends, a proper cake from a bakery, a scavenger hunt that Craig designed and ran himself for 2 hours in the backyard with a torch in each hand, laughing at his own clues. Renee did Isla's hair the morning of, the two of them in the bathroom with the door closed for 45 minutes, talking. I don't know what they said. I know that when Isla came out, she looked like someone who had been told, without words, that she was worth the time. I was there for the birthday, flew down from Toowoomba. Dougie had the tomatoes well in hand. That evening, after the friends had gone home, and Renee and Craig were cleaning up, and Jackson was somewhere being 13, Isla found me on the back veranda. She sat beside me on the step. The Melbourne evening was mild for April. The garden lit by the fairy lights Craig had strung up weeks before specifically for this day. Poppy, she said. Yes. Am I your favorite? I looked at her. She was grinning slightly. She already knew the answer, and was enjoying the asking. You are my Isla, I said. There is no category for that. She leaned her head against my arm. I think they're trying, she said quietly. Mom and Dad, I think so too. Is that enough? I thought about that for a moment. Carefully. Because she deserved a careful answer. Trying, I said, is where everything starts. The trying is the whole thing. At first. Whether it becomes something more that depends on whether they keep going when it's inconvenient, when it costs something. She nodded slowly. With that old soul face she gets sometimes. I'll watch, she said. That's all any of us can do, I said. She was quiet for a while. Then, thank you for coming. That night, there was nowhere else I was going to be, sweetheart. She put her hand over mine on the step. That was enough. That was, in every way that mattered. Entirely everything. I want to say one more thing. Because I've spent a long time in schools and around children, and there is something I've watched adults get wrong over and over and over again. Choosing a child is not a single moment. It is not the day you adopt them, the day you sign papers, the day you first hold them. It is not a decision you make once. It is a practice. It is the Saturday morning you rearrange your schedule. It is the art show you show up to. It is the birthday where you do the thing they asked for, not the thing that was convenient. It is the holiday you plan with everyone in the room. Not just the children who share your face. Children do not need to be perfect to deserve this. They do not need to earn their seat at the table by being easy or grateful or low maintenance or by never inconveniencing anyone. They need to know, in the cellular, bone-deep way that forms the foundation of every adult they will become, that they were wanted, not tolerated, not managed. Wanted. A child who is loved but not chosen learns that love has conditions. A child who is chosen every day, imperfectly, but consistently, learns something else entirely. She learns that she is the point, not an addition to someone else's story. The point. Isla knows that now. She knew it the moment she heard my car in the driveway at 7 in the morning. She knew it when I stayed. She'll keep knowing it every day. We make sure she does. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Welcome to Shadow Letters. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment below. I read every one. And if you're new here, subscribe. There are more stories where this came from. And none of them are easy. But all of them are true in the ways that matter.